everyone. Thanks so much for joining us for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, I'm really excited to have Julia Kim here with us. She is a landscape designer, but she's in the career of landscape architecture, and she'll talk to you more about what that really means. But I'm excited to hear more about this career because honestly, it's not a career that I ever really think about or thought about. So without further ado, hey Julia, how are you?
Hey, I'm so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being on with me, and thank you for giving me your time today to talk more about this career of landscape architecture. Um,
Yeah.
let's just jump right in. What is a landscape architect or landscape designer?
So basically, we design the built environment. So like the easiest way I feel like I can explain it for people who like have no idea is most people understand architecture, right? It's like the building. So we basically design everything outside of the architecture. So that goes everything from like, so say there's like a neighborhood, then we'll lay out like the roads and the lots and like everything in that neighborhood, and then the architect will just plop his building on that lot that we've allotted for them, right? And so then in that it goes into like, so that's kind of like big scale, right? So like laying the streets, all the circulation, but then we'll also go into like planting design. We'll go into like hardscape. So if there's like an amenity for your neighborhood, we'll design that.
Like a playground or something?
Playgrounds, pools, where your grill goes, where the pavilion goes. So a lot of it is also like site planning. It, a lot of some people can go into like city planning, things like that when you like zoom out big scale. Um, but yeah, so like generally that's I feel like the simplest way to describe it, but it's actually a really broad profession where like you can do anything from like I said like residential. Um, you can do like parks, recreation, like hotel, resort design. You can do like streetscapes, like city planning, um, like golf courses. Uh,
Ooh.
yeah, it's literally everything. Outside
Right.
of the architecture itself, a landscape architect has probably touched or has been involved with.
It sounds like landscape architects are definitely needed in any kind of engineering firm or structural firm or anything like that. My husband David, he's a structural engineer and he works at a firm where they have architects and things like that. And I've never really talked to him about it, but I would assume they must have an in-house landscape architect too then. They've got to.
Some companies, like our company, we do civil engineering and landscape architecture, so we're both in house. But there's also like just landscape architecture, just design firms. So then like you just like partner with like engineering people or like structure.
Oh, nice.
There's like design build firms where like you design it and they have like crews that go out and actually build it as well, and it's all under like one company roof.
So, at your company, do you do like a specific type of like landscape architecture? Like, you were mentioning like you can do residential or commercial or whatever. Is there a specific type that your firm does, or do you do all kinds of stuff?
We do a little bit of everything. So we do like industrial projects, a lot of commercial projects, multifamily, um, like people on our team, like our firm, like we've done like breweries, like designing like distillery breweries, event areas. I did like a resort style like pool renovations. We've done a lot of multifamily like apartments that I actually have like friends living in, which is super cool. Um, yeah, we do a little bit of everything.
Cool.
A really huge development, almost like kind of like designing like and helping them like shape like a town that's being developed right now. So like laying out all of that, and not like the network of trails and parks and all of that. So it's it's pretty broad, and we do a little bit of everything, which is fun though, because you get to experience everything.
Nice. So educate me a little bit, Julia. Say you're presented as a landscape designer, you're presented with a project.
Hmm.
Where does it like how do you start it?
So let's say like all the negotiations and all of that is done, and we have the contract, right? So you will usually start with like a site analysis. So if you can go to the site, see the site, because like there's surveyors who go out and like survey stuff, but it's always different when you're actually out there on site to see like actually the condition of the site that you're going to be like reshaping or redeveloping. So your first step is really to do that and just analyze like what you have, and then you'll do like conceptual plans. Um, so say you're like, I don't know, you're trying to design a park. Um, then you see what's there, and then you'll think of your like concept, and then you'll present these concepts to your owners. They'll choose the direction they want to go, and then you'll start developing like construction documents for it. And this goes into like I said, like picking out the plants, like where the plants go, all the hardscape elements. So like what kind of pavers, like what detail, like how are the steps gonna, is there gonna be a fancy thing at the top of the steps? Like is there gonna be a light on the steps? So like thinking through all those details, like where are the trash cans gonna go? Where are the benches gonna go? Yeah, so you just like lay out and design the entire site, how people are moving in the site, how people are using the site, the programming, for the park. Like maybe on the left side, like you want it to be like a frisbee park. Then like how do you design that, and how do you connect that to the dog park over here? But yeah, so then basically you go through construction documents, and then you'll run, do pricing sets, run that through the contractors and your owners, and then eventually once you get to like 100% and everything is locked and loaded, then it'll go into actual construction. And then our role would be like going on the site, making sure everything is getting built the way it needs to be built. Um, and then we'll have like these things we call like punch lists. So like after they like install something, whether it's hardscape or landscape, we'll go out there and inspect it to make sure it's up to par with our drawings. And if it's not, then we write a little report, and we send out to them telling them to fix X, Y, and Z, or like these plants are dead, please replace it. You did the sidewalk wrong, rip it out. Hopefully you don't have to. But yeah, so it gets like really, it goes from like starts off really big conceptual. How do you lay out the entire site? And then it goes down to like, how are you going to do the score pattern on the concrete?
That's crazy. Oh my gosh, like listening to the
Yeah.
process because, this is not something I'm familiar with. Honestly, it sounds extremely overwhelming. I'm like, wow, there are so many things to think about. I mean, even that last comment you made about, yeah, like what did you the texture? What did you say of the
The
sidewalk?
score pattern and the
Score
concrete.
pattern? Like now I'm gonna go look at the sidewalk of everywhere I go and see what the pattern is. But Julia, what is like your favorite part of the process for you? Like what do you enjoy the most?
Conceptual design,
Okay, so like the beginning.
the beginning.
Okay.
And mostly that's because like I'm not a very detail oriented person.
Mm.
For me, like being able to like think big and like the overall, like what's the overall vision, and like how does it work? How, like what's the feeling people have when they're using these spaces, and being able to like draw out that kind of concept of how things connect. I just like it's a lot looser, it's a lot more fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I really enjoy. But then like once it gets down to like the nitty gritty of like how does this wall connect to like like this paver, I'm like, oh no. Oh gosh, you gotta call your husband in here to like figure out how this wall gets built. Like I don't know. So yeah, thankfully we work as a team. So I've got a team that I work with, and the great thing is we all have different strengths, and so we're always like collaborating and like pulling from each other like ideas. And like there's a girl, my coworker, she's like amazing with plants. And so I'm, and like, like to do like landscape architecture, like everyone's like, oh, like, so you're a plant person. Yo, let me just debunk that right now. I like plants. They're so cute and they just give oxygen and they're just so nice and make you feel good. But I am like, I have like kind of like a brown thumb. Like, it's hard for me to keep things alive. And then like in school, we had to take a plants class. So basically, what you do is you go around campus and you walk around like with your classroom, and your teacher is just like teaching you different plants, right? So you're just like touching and feeling and pointing at plants. And we're like those crazy people. We're just like literally like touching plants, something smelling plants, like those weirdos on campus. And I remember there was this one section of test about like pine trees. And so like our quizzes every week would be like being able to go out and differentiate different types of pine trees. And like some people love that. And I'm like, listen, fam, who cares? They all have those spindly things. Put your Christmas ornament, like, I don't care. But it's like one twist slightly this way.
Oh my gosh.
This kind of leaf, and this one is like a little bit longer. I'm like, listen, honey, ain't nobody got time for that. Just Google that, okay? So everyone has their strengths and weaknesses.
What is your strength?
My strength, I feel like,
plants.
is the conceptual design.
Okay.
Like, the drawing, the ideas, like how does a space work? Because that's what I fell in love with in landscape architecture. Like, that's why I like pursued it. The idea of being able to create spaces for people to use.
So it's like you're kind of like an interior designer for the exterior.
Yeah.
So are you a little bit more on the like creative, artistic side of things then? Do you enjoy art?
That's what I enjoy.
Okay. See, I do not. So I feel like I would not be good at the conceptual stuff. But like the detail stuff, I'm like, oh, or the planning stuff, oh, it's gotta happen X, Y, and Z like this. I'd be good at that. But so that's really awesome, Julia. So you like seeing the vision first, and then have you ever with that in mind, have you ever gone to a client and told them your design ideas and they were like, sorry, I don't like it.
Yes.
Yes. And then are you like offended by it, or have you grown to be like, you know what? Okay, like what do you want then? Like what works for you?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, they're generally pretty nice. They won't like poo-poo your design like so in your face. They're just like, yeah, great. Well, I was also thinking I like and Z, you know? But yeah, I think so when you're originally coming, before you even like start your own design, you want to talk to your clients about like what they're looking for, like what programming are they looking for, like what kind of styles do they like like how do they envision the space, because essentially like they're paying for the space,
Right. Yeah.
So we want it to be the way they want it to be, and so yeah, once you kind of get their feedback, then you start designing, and yeah, there's definitely times you're almost always going to go through revisions. And I think the earlier you accept it, like your first idea is not going to be your best idea. It will always be tweaked, then the easier I think it is, like as you're making revisions, to not get as frustrated.
Sure. Yeah. Makes sense. So Julia, can we go back to like the beginning, like you're out of high school and you're going to college. Was this a decision that you knew right away, or can you kind of take us through that journey a little bit?
Yeah, so for high school, I went to a charter school. It's called GSMST.
Oh, okay, smarty pants.
Oh no, see, that's what I learned.
From Atlanta here, GSMST is like a math oriented school, no?
Yeah, it's a STEM school.
Yeah.
because when you're in middle school, like you think you're good at math because it's like, you multiply 2 times 10, you're like, easy. So I'm like, I could go to STEM school. I love math. And then I realized like I'm really bad at math
No.
technology. Like I don't know how I got through high school. But basically like they decided that we had to do an internship as like a little senior like thesis like fellowship whatever.
Oh,
And
wow.
I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life because like side note, like, okay, when you're 17, 18, like, how am I supposed to know what I want to do with my life? Like, I barely like know who I am. I barely know how to like do anything, to make a decision like that. So basically, my career counselor was basically like, okay, Julia, since you don't know what you want to do, everybody else wants to be a doctor, easy, but you like, nah, I ain't smart enough for that, and we can see through your grades.
No.
Why don't you do something more creative since you like art? But since we are like a STEM school, you should do something kind of engineering-y too. And so there was actually a landscape architecture firm. Well, it was an engineering firm, but they had a landscape architecture department, and it was down the road from where we were at. So she was like, "Listen, you need to do an internship. Just go there. It has some art stuff. It has some engineering, and just do it." So then I did it. I had no idea what it was, but I had no other options because I don't know what I want to do in my life. But it ended up being really fun. I was like, well, I could just sit here and draw stuff. And they were like, okay, so your project will be like, if you can design our courtyard, like, how would you want to design it? I'm like, okay, this is fun. Um, and so that's what I did. And then I went to college and I actually wanted to do industrial design. Um,
And
but
industrial design, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like product design, right?
it's product design. So I didn't even want to do landscape architecture. I was like, this was cool, but like, nah. Um, but I my grades didn't come to par to get to the school I wanted to. So I ended up going to UGA, and basically all I knew was landscape architecture. And I was actually doing graphic design throughout high school and also college to like pay the bills. But because I had been doing that while going to school, like even through high school, I realized like I wasn't good at being that creative all the time. So I didn't want to pursue something that was just like art. So landscape architecture, because I knew it was a balance of both, I was like, all right, I'll just write down landscape architecture and then I'll like go to school at UGA and then I'll transfer, to be able to do industrial design. But yeah, and so then I started taking these classes just to get through it with the thought of transferring. But as I kept taking the classes, I ended up really loving it. Like the more I learned, like the power and the impact that landscape architects make in the world, like I just realized like it was super cool. And another thing I learned is like, so we had to take these like intro studio classes where it's very much like theory, design theory, and sometimes we have to build models. You know how I said I'm not like detail oriented. Girl, my models were trash. For
I'm
me to
sure
have
they
the
weren't that bad.
patience, for me to have the patience to like cut, like eat the cardboard, like my professor was specifically like, Julia, you can't stab the knife in the cardboard. You have to make individual strokes so it's a clean cut. And I was like, listen, ain't nobody got time for
Yeah.
that. So I did what you're not supposed to do and I stabbed it, right? And then I would just take Elmer's glue and try to like smooth the edge. And my professor would be like, did you do what I told you not to do? And I was like, it's part of the terrain, professor. Like, it's like that feeling of like the raggediness. And she was just like, So in that class, I learned that I could never do industrial design because it's a lot of details, a lot of model building, a lot of intricate work.
Interesting.
Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus, that you always know the way. Because I
That's crazy.
would have failed. So yeah, that's kind of how I I ended up sticking with landscape architecture, you know? Um, it's, yeah, like the power of being able to create a space for somebody, you know, I think that's what I fell in love with.
Mhm.
Because you realize like this this the spaces that you've grown up in, you know, like that shapes who you are. You know, like I don't know about you, but for me, like in different like phases of my life, I have different spaces that I grew up in that really like molded me. That I have so many like experiences. And you know, like as a kid, there was like, you know, my playground in my neighborhood. You know, when I got mad at my parents, I would like go out there and sit on the swings. You know what I mean? As I got older, like Swanee Park, like that's hands down one of my favorite places in the world. Like when you know, like literally everything from like doing my first watercolor, learning how to watercolor. I did it at Swanee Park. Like, just like the friendships I've made. Like, as I got older, like I, you know, evolved from going on the swings when I had like family problems to like driving to the park with one of my best friends because we live like down the road from each other. And we've had like so many like late nights, like crying and walking and figuring out our life like at that park. Like, you know, she got engaged at that park. Like, it just like has made such a big imprint on my life.
Mhm.
It's like a landscape architect did that, you know?
That's yes,
And
yes.
it's like if I go in this profession, like I also have the power to create those spaces. And like you realize like those kinds of spaces, like it really brings community together. Like a lot, you know, like you look at Swanee Park, like all of their festivals, like I'm sure like church, like we've had like so many like church picnics, you know, or like small group gatherings, outings, like bring our guitars out there, just play for fun. Like, um, yeah, there's just so much power in like in outdoor spaces, you know, in the environment, and being able to shape that for our community, to bring community together, or like even like on an individual basis, you know, to like help shape a person, you know. I just feel like that's incredible.
Yes, I mean, everything you just said, I love that. Like, again, would never think that way. However, find it so powerful that you fell in love with this career path because of the way it shaped your life and impacted you. And it's, you know, people talk, I mean, most people, not most people, some people, they want to do things that like help people, you know, like, oh,
Mm,
I want to help. I want to help the world. I want to help people, which is an amazing thing. But to be able to do it through this medium, right? You are helping people. You're creating
yeah,
spaces for people to live and to have community, right? Which is so important. Have like togetherness with to be. I mean,
yeah,
if there's anything we've learned through this pandemic, it's man, things can get lonely without even you realizing how.
yeah.
Like you didn't even know that you liked being around people in a space until you can only be in your own home space with
Yes.
nobody around, and I just think that's incredible, Julia. That yeah, I mean, you found this career where you can truly change lives, but in a medium that I again would never think is important, if I'm honest,
Yeah.
you know?
It's like invisible. Cause like, you know, like you walk somewhere and you like see a bench and you sit down, right? You don't even think about it. But you realize somebody's thought through like that bench being right there.
That's crazy. I'm never gonna think of a bench the same. I'm never gonna
Yeah.
look at a bench the same ever again.
And like there's all these metrics of like, you know, like how much people walk in a time span. And so it's like, you know, like you think through like, okay, well, people are probably gonna get tired at these access points, like put rest stops, and then like you can like whether you like when you make like a trail big or a sidewalk big or small, it's gonna people don't think about it, but it makes people move differently. When it's wider, people can walk slower and it's more leisurely. When it's like narrower, people are like they just like get through it, you know? So like even like controlling like those kinds of things, like yeah, it's just like it's an invisible kind of profession that people just don't realize, but it's like we touch like every area of your life.
Yeah. I mean,
You know?
well, I want to speak to the invisibility of what you just said. Like, I feel like with engineers and like architects and things like that, like if you aren't noticing it, it means they did a good job, is what I
Mhm.
feel. You know,
Mhm.
like if there's something structurally wrong with a building and
Yeah.
you notice it, then they're not a good, like they didn't build it right, you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, to what you're saying about being invisible, it's like it's because they did something, you guys are doing something right. You designed it well, you know, that people don't notice. And it is very impactful without even realizing it. Um Man, that is so cool. That's really cool. Okay,
I
so
know, right?
this came to mind while you were talking though, and I don't know if it's even relevant right now,
Okay.
but you know, like with COVID and the pandemic, um, like, do you think that will affect the way design happens at all?
Yeah, for sure.
But
Um,
I don't know if it's impacting it right now, but I'm
on
wondering.
like the most immediate scale, it's like putting in hand sanitizing stations.
That's so insane to me.
Yeah, or just like the way you like space out like site furnishings. Because we also pick site furniture and
Oh,
place them. So then it's like placing them like 6 feet apart. Minimum. So, like accounting for those spaces. And yeah, I feel like depending on how long COVID goes, like
sure, yeah.
I'm sure it will definitely impact like big scale, but also like immediately this scale now too. Like you can see it, in just like site furnishings or just like, you just want to make everything a little bit bigger, or like people are more cognizant of like needing outdoor patio spaces and outdoor areas.
Oh.
People are yeah, trying to put more emphasis on like outdoor spaces, whether it's for restaurants or things like that, just because it's like now everyone's dining outside, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
So you have to
definitely.
make those adjustments.
Man, what a time, huh?
I
So
know.
interesting.
It's wild.
Julia, so after you graduated
Mhm.
college, did you just go right into working?
Yes, I did. So I did an internship. I actually did two internships, but one was more like actually like cutting grass. And then I did the internship with the firm I'm at now, and they offered me a job right after college, and so I moved to Charleston, right after college, and I've been working with them. I'm going into my 5th year now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Um, do you feel like you've grown a lot since you've been there as a landscape designer?
yeah, for sure. And I think I'm really blessed just because my firm is just so good about creating an environment of learning,
Hmm.
and so yeah, they just like encourage you to like ask questions, and things like that, and so it's been really good. And I feel like, like school and work is different. Like when you're in school and you have these projects and you're like, I'm gonna create this awesome space, like there's zero budget. You could literally just do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to actually think through how anything connects to anything. I just have to sell it to my professor. Well, this is the
Right.
idea, professor. Somebody else smarter than me will figure it out. The structural engineer, okay? um, but then you get into the real world and you realize, like, oh, like there's budget. There's something called money.
Mm,
Like consider like the actual structurability, and there's like also like zoning codes.
mm,
Like depending on where you're at, like there's regulations of what you can and cannot do. Um, and so I think just working has just really shaped my understanding of how to create spaces, but just like in a more, I don't know, just like it's much more reality,
sure, yeah, definitely.
which is good and bad, pros and cons. But yeah, I've definitely grown a lot, especially because like I have we have a lot of like really talented people that I work with that we collaborate a lot with. So I'm just always trying to learn as much as I can from them, just pick their brain as much as I can. And so, um, yeah, like it's with anything, right? Like if you want to grow or get better, you have to surround yourself with people who are better than
Mm.
you know, so that you can learn from them.
Yes, definitely. That's great advice, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Julia, uh, you know, at the beginning of our chat, we had mentioned, you're a landscape designer.
Mm.
And I can't officially call you a landscape architect, you had told me, because you don't have your license yet. Is that correct?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
what does that mean? Like what do you have to work for a certain amount of time, or do you have to take a big test, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's both, and it varies depending on what state you're in.
Oh, okay.
So different states require like you have to work under a registered landscape architect for like a few years, and then you can start taking your tests to get licensed. So you know, it's like a lawyer like takes like a bar exam, and then they can like be a lawyer. It's kind of like that. It's just
Hmm, hmm.
being able to like call yourself a landscape architect. Um, then they give you a little stamp and all that kind of stuff to be official.
I see. Okay. Is the test
Yeah.
itself like challenging? Do you know?
Yes. So I haven't taken
Okay.
it myself yet. So, you know, I can't speak on personal experience, but from my coworkers and the people I know that have taken it or are in the process of taking it, so it's a 4-part test. Um, but yeah, I heard it is challenging. It's kind of like the SAT, where like it's a little bit tricky, like when you work in the real world, we're like, well, obviously you do this, but then the test sometimes
It's
like there is like a specific answer they're looking for, you know?
right,
It's a
right.
little tricky, but I mean, there's a bunch of courses that you can take. I know UGA offers a lot of like summer like courses and things like that where people can learn um, how to. It's like going to Hagwon, you know?
Sure, yeah. Wait, so the landscape architect, the difference between you and the landscape architect is basically they have the power to sign off on the design, like officially, right?
On a
Or
set of drawings. Yeah,
okay, okay. So really it's like not that much different other than the stamp
yeah,
itself. Okay.
yeah,
And I guess there's liability.
yeah,
Okay. Makes
yeah.
complete sense.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like probably more money too, right? Because they're liable.
Yeah, for sure. But you know, when you work at a company too, I think a lot of times like just because you have a stamp, I mean, I don't know how it works for everyone, but like,
Uh-huh.
I don't think like they're like, okay, well, you stamp it. Like, you know, like they have like different insurances for people and stamps. And so it's more, I feel like at a certain point, it's kind of like a prestige, like, I'm a landscape architect. Oh, you know, I mean, there's a lot of great things too, you know, but
Yeah, yeah.
you're doing the same work whether you have it or not.
No,
But
I
it's
understand.
good to have it. And it's something that I'm working towards for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So, you mentioned that it's different in all states. You did grow up here in Georgia, in
Mhm.
Atlanta, but then where are you right now currently with your
I'm in
job?
Charleston, South
Charleston.
Carolina.
So out of college, you moved to Charleston and
Mhm.
you grew up here like your entire life in Georgia?
Basically,
Okay.
like first grade on. So yeah.
So, I don't know if you feel comfortable speaking about this, but
Mhm.
um for somebody that's grown up here, went to college here in the same area and had the same group of friends and things like that, what was that transition like moving to a different state right out of college? Because for
Mm,
me, I would think that would be the most difficult part for me. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
it was hard to be honest. Like, and it was really lonely. Um, again, thankfully, like you know, my coworkers, a lot of them are. Our firm is pretty young,
Mm.
and they're really cool. So like, thankfully, I had people that like pulled me out to like hang out. You know, so I was able to like start building community like with them. But definitely, like, it's one of those things where I realized, like, I had moved without really knowing anybody. But then my other friends were kind of like, I mean, I don't want to say jealous, but like don't complain like you have a job, you moved out on your own, and you have your own place, and like for whatever reason, I don't know about you, but like at least for my friends growing up, we were always like, I just want to leave Georgia, like oh Georgia, like blah blah blah, and so then I left, and they're like you moved, like you did it, but I'm like, guys, but you don't understand. It's lonely out here,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. No, I mean,
like
I was like that, except in high school. And I'm the
mm,
only one that like actually did it. I left and I went to college for 2 years at UC Irvine.
yeah,
And somehow I found my way back to Atlanta. But
yeah,
but yeah, it is lonely. It's super lonely and like you don't realize it. It's like the grass is always greener kind of thing. You don't realize what you're stepping into. I think that's
yeah,
why I wanted to ask you, because is it, you're single, you're just out of college, you're excited about this new career, you feel like you're going on an adventure. But I think I wanted to ask you about it because um that's part of your journey, and
mm,
it's something that I think a lot of people don't talk about,
yeah,
like the difficult, challenging parts of being in a quote unquote adult.
yeah. I think I mean, like, I don't know if it was just me, but like, I just really didn't know how to be an adult. Like, because like in Atlanta, like, especially because like my family, like, I didn't really have to learn how to cook. Like, I could buy side dishes at H Mart. My mom would pack me lunch. I moved to Charleston knowing how to make kimchi bokkeumbap and like egg and rice and like chicken and broccoli. I feel like that's what I ate for like 2 months.
Hey girl, that's pretty good though.
And I was like, what am I doing with my life? How come I can't live like this? And so like the great thing about like going out, I feel like on your own is like it really stretches you to
Mm.
um push your boundaries, learn things that you didn't think you would learn, make yourself go out and meet new people and like just like put yourself out there, you know? And so yeah, I think one thing, like if you do move out on your own, it's like you have to be okay with that. Like,
Mm.
and you have to like understand like you're gonna have great days and you're gonna have like really bad days of like trying to figure it out, of like being lonely and then also having to force yourself like out of the house. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not allowing yourself to like stay in a rut anywhere, but like just find solutions to like if you're unhappy, well, what's making you unhappy and how are you gonna fix it?
Yeah.
Like like I said, like I didn't really know anyone, but thankfully there was a Korean barbecue restaurant literally across the street. So I would just like every night I would go and eat there, like by myself at the bar. And eventually they like felt bad for me. Like, who's this girl eating at the bar by herself like every other night? So they become friends, you know? So sometimes you just
Seriously, you did that?
yeah, I did a lot of things by myself. Eat at restaurants, like go
Man.
places, explore. Um, I loved it and I hated it. But now I've kind of like grown to like be okay with it, and now it doesn't bother me to like go to a restaurant by myself or
No, but yeah, but I mean, like, you have to put yourself out there in order to like
yeah.
build community and friendships and just like I mean, even just to experience and enjoy like these first 5 years of
Yeah.
being on your own,
Yeah.
like if you don't do it, you end up sitting, like you said, you end up just sitting in your apartment, binge
Mhm.
watching something, and
Mhm.
never really experiencing or enjoying. Where are you, Charleston?
Charleston, yeah.
Yeah, what a great city to be in,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like it's so rich, but you would never know if you just kind of like retreat, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? I think that's amazing, Julia. That's
But you
really,
know
you're so
what
brave.
but you know what else I realized? As you get older, it's harder to make friends because
Yes.
because like out of college, it's like easy. I made so many friends in college, but that's because everyone is like starting fresh.
Yes.
You get to know people, but you gotta realize like after college, people like have their groups of friends. And so like if you don't put yourself out there, like no one is just gonna be there like wanting you to just come and join their friend group. Like you almost at a point like have to like insert yourself. You know, or like I know a lot of times I would be like, okay, do I really want to like hang out? Like, do I really want to spend money again? And I would literally tell this to myself, Julia, this is an investment you're making to build a community. Spend that money, girl. You can eat, you know, fried rice for the next week after. Or like, I know you tired, girl, but just go out and hang out with them.
Man,
Sleep on the
yeah.
weekend.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's something that like no one really ever talks about either. Of just like when you get older, like outside of college, it's harder to make friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then.
I can attest to that for
Yeah.
sure. But man, yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, even just like even just deciding to be open to job opportunities outside of where you live after college, it's kind of a bold move, especially if you've grown up in one place. And um, I think it's great, that you've been able to find people, and or even just like these different transitions in your life too that are happening. And we talked a little bit before we came on the podcast how things, just kind of when you're in a different place and you're on your own, it just kind of goes up and down like a roller coaster a little bit
Yeah.
sometimes. And I just think it's so awesome that you are living faithfully, just by putting yourself out there and um, being open. But Julia, after this this conversation I'm having with you, I'm like, man, this girl is just so awesome. Like you're just so awesome. And like just
Oh,
the
thank
way
you.
you engage with me and even engage with your work and talk about your work, I'm just so encouraged. It's really
Yeah, thank
great.
you. You're making me sound way cooler than I am.
You're super cool. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating right now. But okay, but anyway, sorry, I went on my own little tangent there.
No.
But yeah, I mean like so what about landscape architecture do you not like?
I think probably so one thing you realize is like because it is so broad, you have to know a little bit about everything.
Hmm.
And like I said, like I have my strengths that I feel like I'm strong at, and then the areas I'm not as strong at, like a part of me like dreads like having to do it and learn it. You know, like construction documents, like I don't know. You just ask the guy who like has built benches his entire life to just like build it. You know, like why do I have to tell him where the screws go? So like in my mind, it like just doesn't make sense. But then at the same time, like you have to have a certain understanding of how things get built
Hmm.
to be able to design something that's like feasible, right?
Ah, I
Because you're
see.
also considering like budget, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't have an endless budget, like how are you going to construct something, or like what are you proposing to the client that they can build or purchase that fits within their budget? Like how is it going to be constructed? What material are you going to use? You know, like, and so like you have to understand like construction. You know, you have to understand like stormwater, like how is the water flowing on the site? How are you addressing it? What plants are you using to address it? Like, you know what I mean? And like, you know, understanding like grading, a little bit of engineering, like, you know, slopes and like all that kind of stuff. Like, is it ADA accessible? Like, you know, how are you making it ADA accessible? That's probably one of the most difficult things is like feeling like you have to know like a little bit about everything.
Yeah.
So I feel like be really, really good, which, you know, just takes time.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think we kind of talked about it earlier too. Um, when sometimes you have like a design idea or a concept, but then it gets altered or like there are budget cuts and then like a lot of it gets stripped. And then you're like, oh no, like now how do I make it work with like half the budget? You know?
Mm,
And so seeing designs evolve, um, sometimes I think can be frustrating,
mm-hmm.
with just like client communications or things like that, which, I think is like any job. Um, but yeah, I think really learning how to have a good handle on those things and just understanding like you're not going to win every battle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Learning how to pick your battles, particularly in design, like, okay, well, he can't afford this or that. So which one is more important? Which one am I going to push? And we're going to put more money to make, a bigger feature, So I think learning how to like choose those battles is probably the most difficult part. And also working with the government because they slow.
Yes, red tape I heard
Honey,
is
they
always
slow.
terrible.
Yes. And like sometimes I'm just like, have you read your own ordinance? Like, sense to you? Like, why did you do this? Like, do you that side tangent, I won't go there. But working with government is definitely not the easiest.
Mm,
Like as you get older too, you realize some people just like power trip.
interesting, yeah.
They're like, oh, like you have to present like your projects to like the city council usually to get approval,
Okay, yeah. Huh?
build your permits to be able to like do construction and all of that. There's just like sometimes people who just like they think they're high and mighty because they're sitting on your board and like you're like, well, tell me where in the ordinance like why I can't use this plant, and they're like, well, the ordinance says it has to be approved by me, and I'm just like, give me patience to love.
Oh man,
Okay,
that's
very
tough.
good.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's
little
definitely
things.
tough.
Um,
Oh gosh.
yeah.
So has there ever been a project, Julia, where I don't even know how to ask this question, but I guess what I'm getting at is like, is there a project that's been like memorable for you?
Yes. Actually, I have a few, but probably my top. Can I say my top two?
Sure, yeah, please.
Um, so this one is a Seabrook Island pool. And it's my first project I got to kind of like manage. My mentor kind of set me up to be able to do that, so it was really a team effort. But I got to lead a lot of like the client, conversations and the meetings. But basically, over on Seabrook Island, they just did a big pool renovation, and we basically doubled the size of their pool, and like have a bar and like just all this cool stuff. And so because that was like my first like project I got to manage, it's like my baby. Where like like even down to like the joint pattern on the ground, like I like went out there and laid them out myself.
Wow.
Yeah. And our clients are very interesting. But yeah, but the best part of it was like, so I actually have a good friend of mine in college, and her in-laws bought a house on Seabrook Island. It's kind of like it's not retirement, but it's like a lot of old bougie people
Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
live there. A lot of people retire there. Um, so when the pool first opened, right after it got built, they invited me to like hang out at the pool. And so it was her husband's sister's family was also there with us. And first of all, like going to a place that you designed and seeing people use it is just like, I can't even describe like what that feels like.
I'm even emotional thinking about it. So
And there was one comment that like her, um, that she made, like my friend's in-law sister, and she was like, Julia, like my kids are gonna grow up here. And I was just like,
that's amazing. Yeah.
just like people, like just watching people like make memories like at this pool, and like, yeah, like truly like families are gonna grow up like hanging out at this pool, like, and just knowing that like I got to like help shape that small part of their life and hopefully have lots of good memories. That's just really powerful to me. The second thing was like the second project was like a very small scale project. It was like one of the first projects I worked on, and it was like a little park they created out of like a parking island. So like if you go like like it's kind of like a big shopping center
Okay.
facility, and like a vast like parking area, and they wanted to create like a little event space under like this big like magnificent oak tree they have. So they basically had this really big parking island that they decided to turn into like a small event space. So me and my mentor at that time, like he led, but he allowed me to like help a lot in the design, and like took me around to like do all of that and go through the entire process. And then it got built, and then they hosted a silent disco. And so
What's
like
a silent disco? What is that?
so there's the oh my gosh, you need to go to one. It's one of the best things ever. So basically, there's these like you'll probably have like 2 or 3 DJs, and then you get a pair of headphones.
Oh.
You get like 3 channels, so you can switch off of what music you want to listen to. And so like imagine like you're in this like parking lot under this big tree, but like it looks really cool now. Like there's artificial turf, that we have like a little stage area. We have like these lights coming down from like the tree, and there's these like DJs, and like because everyone has headphones on, you can't hear anything. Right?
Right.
Just walking, you just hear the DJs being like, "Yeah, put your hands up, put your hands up," and then you just see all these people just dancing in silence. Like just imagine that. Like you're going shopping and you look over and you just hear a man yelling like, "Put your hands up, hands up," and that's all you hear, and you just see people just like
Oh man.
silence. And it is wild. It was wild.
That's crazy. That's so fun. But so you created this space for people to have this kind of event there.
Yeah, and they do a bunch of like outdoor concert series out there now. So like every Thursday they have like a band or something. People like bring their lawn chairs out on the little artificial area that we created, and then they do that, and it's just so cool being like, like people like make memories here, like,
Yeah, that is really neat. I mean, like I feel like it would be so special. Like no, definitely. I think that's so cool. That's so cool. It's so special. I feel like I'm a heart person like you are. I can tell you're
Mm.
like a feeler.
Yeah.
So me, I mean like even I cry just like looking at things that my husband said he like kind of did, and it's like a supermarket, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, honey, like this is so great that you did this." And he's like, "Whatever." Like but I'm like, "No, like people can go to the supermarket now." But
Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. I can totally resonate with what you're saying. And those projects are so awesome. I love the first one though. The pool one
Mm.
is something I feel like
Yeah.
um yeah, would be so near and dear to my heart if I were you too. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I feel like a lot of things I also share like all the things that were hard about the profession and moving, but like a lot of great things too, really impacting life. And even like the moving and moving on your own, like I've been stretched in ways I don't think I would have been stretched like if I was still in Georgia. And the people I've met here are like incredible,
Mm,
they wouldn't have met. So highly
yeah,
recommend it
definitely.
yourself. And landscape architecture is awesome too.
Do it.
There's
Everyone just
difficult
do it.
parts too, but there's great stuff. The pros definitely outweigh the cons in both ways.
Amazing. Julia, everything you have said today for me has just been truly fascinating. Um, before we end our time together, I wanted to ask you, do you have any advice for anybody that maybe is thinking about landscape architecture or just any advice at all?
Mm, I would say if we're on a general note,
Hmm.
I think don't be afraid to dream big for your life. Um, like especially like, as Asian Americans, we kind of grow up being like, oh, like be a doctor, be a lawyer, and like that's kind of like what you're pigeonholed. Um, but there's so much more out there, and I think like for you to create this podcast is just absolutely amazing, and I'm so encouraged by that. Because like like for me, like when I first told my parents I'm gonna do landscape architecture, they thought I was gonna mow people's lawns for the rest of my life.
No, okay, but like let's be real here. If you
Yeah,
know what it is, it kind of could sound like that, okay?
yeah. And so they're just like, what? Why? but but now like they're really proud of me, like, and so I think it's just knowing like there's so much more out there than what you think that
Mm.
and if you can just have the courage to explore those things and definitely like network, meet people, learn from people, like everyone you meet, just like treat them like they have something like of value that like you can learn from. And I think the more that like you're open minded to learn from people and like not be afraid to like fail or make mistakes, yeah, just the amount of things that you can just learn and realize like you can dream so much bigger for your life, and like the opportunities that will come your way, I just feel like get bigger and bigger and just like better and better when you allow yourself that freedom, you know.
Mhm.
um so I think like on a general note, I think just really like, yeah, not being afraid to like explore the things that you're interested in, not being afraid to ask questions, um just, yeah, just having to get rid of that fear of failure, just like learning to have a growth mindset in everything that you do, of
Yeah.
it's, you're succeeding or you're learning, it's like if it's not, like if you think your life was supposed to go one way, like I thought my life was supposed to do industrial design, clearly that was not it for me. um but then like you just like never know like where life will take you, if you're just open-hearted to allowing life to take you like where it needs to take you, so like don't feel like you have all the answers, and it's okay to not know all the answers to your life. It's okay to not know what you want to do, um but yeah, just being able to learn from every situation that you're in,
Mm.
no matter what you're doing. I think that's really important, because then, it's easy to feel like, oh, I'm a failure because like I didn't graduate in like 4 years, or like I changed my major 5 times, or like I'm switching careers. Like, but when you really think about like the bigger picture of life, you know? Because I think sometimes like we have that thought, and because we're only thinking about like right now, what's ahead of me in this moment. But when you can kind of like look out at your life, being like, this is such a small, minuscule thing compared to the next 50, 60 years of my life. Making those decisions, I think, don't be afraid to make those decisions, and explore. And I think if you want to go into landscape architecture, um, yeah, just know that it might not be exactly the way school is. And I think like, like any profession though, like there's always the not fun things you have to do. Like there are days where you're sitting in the computer doing construction documents all day. But like all of that is just part of the job, and there's no job you'll go into that like you love everything. There's going to be stuff you like, stuff you don't like, but like I think when you can focus on like why you're there, but why I love landscape architecture, that I will sit here for like X amount of hours doing these construction documents. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just rooting yourself in that and knowing like there's always a process in growing yourself, and like being able to get to a place where you start from like learning basics, things you might not like, and then you can eventually get to a place where you can do like they trust you to do like design,
Mm.
you're not gonna like graduate and then immediately become like a senior designer. So like the sooner you can recognize like it takes time to build these skill sets, no matter how good of a designer you think you are. Just having that humility, to learn and to grow, I think is really important, and probably the biggest advice I can give for anyone trying to go into that profession.
Yeah, all of that was really sound advice, Julia. I feel like what the last part you said of just having humility in the things that you do, will get you far in life. Definitely. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about while we were together?
I don't think so.
Great. You know,
Anything else?
I just wanted to give you a chance if there was something I missed. But Julia, thank you so much for your time today. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I learned so much about landscape architecture and what you do. And thank you for sharing your journey with us. I feel like, you pointed out that, you thought you were going to do something and it turned out to be a blessing that you didn't do that. And even in the beginning of your story, of you talking about how you even got into landscape architecture with the internship and things like that, and just being open, um, man, I think something I took from that experience is, uh, just say yes to things. You know, about being open, like just you just never know, and
Yeah.
um it's almost like if you hadn't said yes, you would have just missed opportunities.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yes, thank you again. Thank you so much.
No, thank you. This has been awesome.
Yes. You are welcome to come chat with me anytime.
Okay, taking you up on that.
Part two or something. But
Awesome.
all right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you have any questions about landscape architecture, I know a person that could maybe help you out. Please feel free to DM us through social media, or you can email me at podcastwigu, WIGU, @gmail.com. But yeah, thanks again for joining us. Until next time, guys. Bye.